Number one thing a founder doesn't want to hear is you don't have product market fit. But what I do find they're open to is you don't have strong product market fit. You have a product, you have a market, but it's not as strong as it maybe could be. And we need to strengthen it. And the way you strengthen it is by gaining a deeper understanding of your customers. Because I was a pretty black and white case of like Voltage CRM didn't have product market fit. We had one customer, we had one product, and that was it. And like it wasn't very good. But if you're on the spectrum of like, all right, you've got 5 or 10, but you're struggling with demand gen, well, you have a product, you have a market, you've got some customers, like you have product market fit. And so I think the thing where a lot of founders get wrong is they maybe jump into revenue a little bit too early without a really truly deep understanding of the customer, the customer's pain, all the different variations and places where that pain could show up, all the second and third order consequences, and have a very specific customer profile in mind.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where great businesses, like great pets, thrive on consistency, creativity, and knowing exactly when to beg for attention. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. How do you know if your business idea is a winner or if you're just fooling yourself? Too many founders fall in love with their vision, build a product they think people need, and then only realize too late that the market doesn't care. Anybody else done that? I have. Today, we're diving into why customer validation is the real key to success. Because if you're not deeply listening to your customers, you're guessing. And guessing, that doesn't pay the bills. In this episode, we're sitting down with someone who learned this lesson firsthand. We'll explore the journey from musician to sales leader, the hard lessons from early failures, and why product market fit isn't just a buzzword, it's the difference between a thriving business and one that never gets off the ground. We'll also break down the strategies he used to help companies like Uber scale up, proving that when you get market fit right, sales becomes predictable revenue. But it doesn't stop there. With a new book on the horizon, fresh insights from the Predictable Revenue podcast, we're unpacking what it takes to build a structured, scalable strategy, one that prioritizes the right customers, automates what can be automated, and leaves room for the human touch where it matters the most. So if you're tired of throwing darts in the dark and ready to build a company that scales because of your strategy, not in spite of it, then this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Our expert guest last Thursday was Donald Kelly, award-winning sales leader and host of the Sales Evangelist podcast. He shared how sales professionals can break through the noise, engage buyers authentically, and close more deals. That's the point, right? Donald's insights in leveraging human connection, multi-channel engagement, and AI-assisted selling are absolute game changers for any sales team. And our founder last week, Gerald Zenkel, CEO and co-founder of Kickscale, revealed how AI is revolutionizing sales efficiency, from optimizing sales processes to secure multi-million-dollar deals with top global brands. Gerald broke down the future of sales strategy and automation and what they're doing with it today at Kickscale. If you missed either one of those episodes, I encourage you to go back and revisit because they are really, really good. My guest today is Collin Stewart, CEO of Predictable Revenue and host of the Predictable Revenue podcast. A self-described failed musician turned sales expert, Collin has built and scaled high-performing sales teams. He's also bootstrapped Predictable Revenue into a multi-million-dollar success and merged with Aaron Ross's venture. Today, he's breaking down what actually works in outbound sales, the biggest mistakes founders make, and how to build a customer acquisition engine that scales up with you. Welcome, Collin Stewart. Hey, Collin, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you call yourself a failed musician. What was the turning point that led you into sales from music and ultimately to founding Predictable Revenue?
We had a band. We were pretty good. We played in some fun venues around town. And it was just this realization, like we were working pretty hard and I was much better at like getting us booked in venues than I was at actually being on stage. And like, I enjoy playing guitar and everything,
Yeah.
but I remember being on stage and like, we put in a pretty good show. And then the guy came after us and I was like, that's a real professional musician. And like, this person is putting so many hours in every week. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just not, it's not what I love doing. Like, I love playing music, but I don't want to spend 15, 20 hours a week practicing. Like, that's just, I played it casually. And so that was kind of one of those moments where you're like, yeah, this guy's legit. I'm not, and I probably have strengths that are elsewhere.
Oh, that's cool. And then, predictable revenue. What led you into sales?
I've been in sales most of my life. Even when I was in the band, I was still in a sales role. And I spent 10 years as an account exec I was technically a sales manager, but pretty much a glorified account exec role for about 10 years before I started the company that turned into predictable revenue. And so the origin story there is, being a young sales kid, like I got pulled into every CRM project and made me think, okay, I've been using Salesforce since 2005, 2004, something like that.
Yeah,
and
that's early.
I went from I saw the transition from Maximizer to Goldmine installed on your computer CRMs, if we're old enough to admit that we used to use those, to Salesforce. And my insight was like at least Salesforce delivered through an Internet Explorer 5 is not going to be a sales productivity increase for the salespeople. It's going to be a decrease. And the trade-off is better data for the executive team, the managers, but a worse user experience. And so that was the genesis of my first company. It didn't work out well for a number of reasons, but we can get into that later. But that's how I kind of went from a salesperson to an entrepreneur.
That's cool. And I love how you kind of discovered that sales talent in getting the band booked. That's one of the things that I think a lot of musicians struggle with is, finding gigs and staying busy. And so, that's something that you found early on and were able to really turn that into a career and now helping other people do the same.
Yeah, it's been fun. And for clarity, like I'd been in sales while I was also in the band. And so it was obviously like, I knew what I was good at and I was like realizing, I'm like, I think I could see what we were making with the band. And I'm like, I just don't see us taking that next step and going from, medium revenue to, or like getting paid a little bit to getting paid enough to live off of, especially when I was making good money as a salesperson. I'm like, I'm never going to, doing this, I'm never going to replace this salary.
Oh, that's good. Well, with the early companies, you said, it didn't go as planned. I think that happens with a lot of us, early ventures and lessons learned. What are maybe some of the big lessons you learned early on that you've carried forward?
I think the biggest one, like the biggest failure of the first CRM company was just the fact that we didn't really validate the idea. And I did a lot of, I read the Mom Test and Lean Customer Playbook and Startup Owner's Manual, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. I read all those books and I got out of the building and I interviewed people. And I think the thing I missed was I wasn't open and I was asking questions to understand, but I was still at the same time set on my idea. Yeah. I had spent 10 years, I'm the CRM expert. I'm going to be the Steve Jobs of CRM, which is just a stupid thing to say to yourself. But I did, so I'll admit it. I said it. I thought it. I believed it. It was stupid. And so I had this vision and I was building my vision. And a lot of customers agreed with kind of that vision, but not 100% with it. There were, they wanted 40 to 60% of the vision. And I was 100% ride or die. It's my vision or nothing at all. And I spent 18 months trying to sell a product that was my vision or nothing else. And we had one customer.
Wow.
So, and I'm decent at sales. And I'd done it before. And so I was like, why can't I close anything? And then I thought back to all my previous sales experience. I'm like, well, when you've got a good seller and they can't close suddenly, what do you think it is? What changed? It's what they were selling. And so I kind of had this realization where a mentor sat me down and said something along the lines of, I can't wait till you're working on something where you have a chance of being successful.
It's a wake-up
As a
call.
Canadian, that's about as mean as you're allowed to be without losing your passport. And So I'm appreciative to Roger because it really helped me realize I needed to pull my head out of my ass. And it was said with kindness and with good intentions. And he was sort of, yeah. So it was this realization that nobody wanted to buy my CRM system. And like, I needed to actually listen to customers. And as soon as I let go of my idea and started listening, that's when everything changed.
That's really, really smart. It's hard to do though when you're going out and you really have a vision and you're kind of doing that market research. You know what you're supposed to do, but really I've done this before where I'm just really looking for validation of my idea, and they can say whatever they want to, and the parts that I hear are the parts that I want to hear, and all the other stuff is just noise. And I just
yeah, thanks. I just had it cut, and you're like, what?
Right.
Yeah. So 100%. And as an entrepreneur, you still have to do that sometimes when you're creating a new product. You have to understand like where to draw the line of like, you know, obviously you're not going to build, you know, a faster horse. I think we all know the phrase, but there's a fine balance of like, I started with a closed opinion of what I was going to build as opposed to, okay, let's sit down and see what the problems are.
Right.
And it's hard to strike the balance of, and the thing that I really missed, like, I was an idiot. I made a bunch of dumb decisions, but I think the thing that I missed was you have to balance listening to customers and really hearing what's underneath their pains and struggles and challenges with an open mind, because they're going to tell you one thing. And if you build exactly what they tell you, you're building the wrong thing as well. 100%. And so you have to listen and see, okay, what is what's really underneath this? And what are the second and third order consequences of that? And then how do we account for all of those? Because one customer isn't going to be able to know it all or see your perfect vision. And so it's all about how do we strike that balance between the two?
I like that. It is finding that balance and getting below the surface, because you're right. If you just ask them, and I think that's still a valid analogy of, you know, build a faster horse. A lot of times that's what they think is, you know, I just want to do this one thing. And if you go and you build that one thing, then you've really missed so much of, well, why do you want that? What is it going to give you? And what is it that you're doing today? How does that work? Why? and the deeper you get into that, you really understand the problem that you're solving. And the top part that they were talking about, it's probably a symptom. It's not the root cause. And when you can get down to that, that's when you can really build something cool.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that you said was a lot of companies try to invest in revenue too early. And how does that work? And what's the big risk of kind of scaling sales before you have that good understanding of your market?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at my example, I was a pretty good salesperson. I knew how to hustle. I knew how to book meetings. I knew how to close, but I didn't have a very good product to sell. And because I was trying to build my idea, and through my time at PR, like I built the CRM, I built a couple other companies, but we've always bootstrapped this. And so we built a services business attached to it. We do founder revenue coaching, and we did a lot of outsource email prospecting. And that was like the first thing that we did. And so I've seen firsthand founders do this. They've spent their money with me, been mad at me because the campaign didn't work. And what that taught me is that the strength of your product market fit is a multiplier of your go-to-market efforts. And the more, I mean, it's so simple. It's so easy and so obvious that I missed it. And I know a lot of folks that have missed it. And it's not necessarily the number one thing a founder doesn't want to hear is you don't have product market fit. But what I do find they're open to is you don't have strong product market fit. You have a product, you have a market, but it's not as strong as it maybe could be. And we need to strengthen it. And the way you strengthen it is by gaining a deeper understanding of your customers. Because I was a pretty black and white case of like Voltage CRM didn't have product market fit. We had one customer, we had one product, and that was it. And like it wasn't very good. But if you're on the spectrum of like, all right, you've got 5 or 10, but you're struggling with demand gen, well, you have a product, you have a market, you've got some customers, like you have product market fit. And so I think the thing where a lot of founders get wrong is they maybe jump into revenue a little bit too early without a really truly deep understanding of the customer, the customer's pain, all the different variations and places where that pain could show up, all the second and third order consequences, and have a very specific customer profile in mind. I've run a lot of engagements where I'm like, okay, so who's your best customers? And they're like, accountants. And you're like, all right. any specific type of accountant? And they're like, no, just any accountant. And you're like,
Right.
okay, we can have a very general conversation with everybody, which means we're speaking to nobody. Or we can carve this up into all these different subsegments and have a very specific conversation with a few people. And a very specific conversation with a few people is always going to do a whole lot better than saying nothing to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Even accountants, and people think, that's a niche, but there's so much underneath that. You can go so much more narrow. But I think a big fear that leaders have is that they're going to lose out on revenue if they pick a niche within accounting. Because I don't know, there's 50,000 accountants. I have no idea, a bunch.
A huge amount, yeah.
Yeah, and but if I cut that down and I only go after 25,000 or 20,000, then that's too small. I'm going to say no to the other 30,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is, and that seems scary.
It can be terrifying. And especially when you're carving out lists and you're saying, no, I'm not going to go speak to these folks. I think the misconception is that you're able to sell to all of them.
Yes.
Right. And like the truth of it is your product is good at a very specific thing. And so you may as well find the people that care the most about that specific thing and say, hey, do you care about this specific thing right now? Right. Like that's the guts of outbound. Right. Like whenever an outbound campaign or sequence works, whenever I'm working with a client and like they're getting meetings, it's not because I'm a genius. It's because they have a product that customers want. They are solving a need where there's a huge amount of value in solving that. And like, sure, I can be helpful, but like I can also do the same thing for somebody who doesn't have product market fit or has weak product market fit, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I look like an idiot. Right. And I'm like, well, the execution here is the same between the two. And like the difference in output is really stark. And I didn't really realize this until we had one customer that just broke my brain open. And it was 2016, beginning of 2016, end of 2015, one of our customers got picked up by Uber to run to be their VP of sales. And he was in charge of launching Uber everything or Uber everywhere. They changed the name a couple times, but it turned into Uber Eats. And we were tapped to book meetings for their account exec team in the top 25 restaurants in the top 50 states that they'd chosen. So like not a huge list, but decent size.
Yeah.
And typically we would take a customer, we'd send 1,000 emails a month and we'd get 10 to 15, maybe sometimes 25, 30 if they were a really good client. And we sent 1,000 emails for Uber and we got 327 meetings booked.
Wow.
Not replies, not meetings it was not replies. It was meetings booked and attended by an in-person salesperson.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the kind of genesis of this, like product market fit is not binary. It's a continuum and it's a multiplier of your go-to-market because Uber got, 7x better, maybe more. I don't know. I'm a sales guy. Math's not my strong suit. They got a whole bunch more out of the same service than all of our other customers. Like if our second best customer was getting 30 meetings a month at that time, Uber was getting 300. So they got a 10x better result than our second best customer because they had such an extreme product market fit. They had a good brand, well positioned, obviously huge market. So like there's a lot of other factors that go into this, but that was that kind of moment where I realized like, oh, we have much less control over this than we think. We did the exact same job we did for Uber as we did for everybody else. In fact, I think we sent fewer emails for Uber than we did for most of our clients, and they got 10x our best customer. So it was a pretty incredible experience. And so how it relates to the founders we work with now, one of the biggest pieces that I spend time working on founders with is helping them slow down. And it's not about not spending money on go-to-market. It's about spending money on go-to-market at the right time, on the right campaigns, on the right target customers. I'm working with one right now, and they've got one really strong vertical, and it's bringing in a couple $1 million. They're like, cool, we want to go and expand out. Let's build sales development campaigns for X, Y, Z industry. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. I'm like, okay, so let's walk through like, how are we going to do this? And what are your economics and this and that? And like, how do you know that this industry is going to need what you have. And it's a bunch of ohs and assumptions and ifs and thens. So what we're pushing for is what we're doing instead of going and because I've done this before and I'm old and curmudgeon-y enough to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a dumb waste of your time and money, because they care more about the time. Like they don't want to lose 3 months of productivity for this year. Right. And it's not necessarily about the money they're spending on me or my team or the SDRs. They care about the time, and we don't want to waste time pursuing opportunities that aren't going to be a fit. So what we're doing instead is using similar outbound motion to go and book customer development interviews with people in all these verticals. And I'm working with the founder to make sure they're asking questions and understanding, basically restarting what I needed to do properly with Voltage as they're opening up a new market. And what that is helping us understand is, what are the real pains? Yes, it's a similar, like the product is going to be very similar, but it's going to be deployed very differently. And the context is very different. It's going to be used by a different set of people. And yes, it's very, very similar when you look at it from a product perspective, but from a sales and marketing perspective, from a who do we need to start the conversation with and what value do they get out of this is very, very different.
That makes a lot of sense. With customer development interviews, how do we leave our bias at the door and actually have a real conversation and make it where it's effective, not just trying to validate our idea?
I think the biggest piece is patience. And I think I always lay out the funnel, my customer development funnel with founders, because especially when you already have product and revenue going, you never want to feel like you're taking a step back. Right? Customer development is something you do at the beginning of starting a company, not in the middle. But I think you can always do more customer development, and because it's going to help you understand your customers, your future customers, what the market's doing, and what the next vertical is doing. And the way I kind of sell it to founders is you're not selling, right? With customer development, especially if you have a product, the first 4 meetings, you're not selling at all. But the 5th meeting, you are adding them to pipeline. And so I call it the customer development funnel. Your first meeting, the first interview is exploratory. You and I are sitting down. We're going to do a day in the life. Tell me about the tools you like, tools you don't like, what's great, what's not great. If I could solve any problem for you, what would it be? That kind of stuff. Sure. Then the second is focused customer development. So we start with, okay, we talked about, this problem space. Tell me about have you tried to solve it before? Tell me about how that impacts you. How does it impact the business? Who else is impacted by it? So that's the focused. Then we do paper feedback, where it's like, hey, I'm trying to understand what are the big chunks needed to solve this. And then it's MVP feedback, and it's, hey, this is how we're thinking about solving it. Does this solve it? Is this 10x better than what you currently have? And then if everybody's saying yes to all of those meetings and they have the pain and this looks 10x better than what they currently have, then now is your opportunity to invite them into a sales process. And those 4 meetings are the things that I connected in the early days when I scaled my second startup, $0 to $1 million in revenue in a couple of months. And it's the core of the book that I have coming out in October. It's the thing that I think I did differently, and it really served me well. And so that's the kind of big piece, is to understand that you can and should sell to your customer development, the people you do customer development with. Because if you're not trying to sell to them, they're not really customers. It's a university research project. Right. And when you start with wide open exploratory conversations, you learn a whole lot more. And as a dirty salesperson, it's also way easier to get people to say yes to an interview than it is to say yes to, hey, can I try selling to you?
Of course.
Especially when you're early days, and especially when you maybe are moving into a new market, or maybe you're not as confident about all the different things you need to say, right? And then this way you start off the conversation from a position of, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm open, honest, of like, this is where we're at. I'm here to learn from you. And I think customers appreciate that. And I think customers appreciate it. I think founders have a much easier time with those conversations. And then it makes the transition from like, okay, learning to earning very, very easy. Because one of the things that I see founders struggling with is wanting to sell. But my buddy Kenny, who was in this same position, and he's like, yeah, I think I screwed up some leads. I'm like, okay, tell me what happened. And he did customer development in one call, and then he showed up, and I'd shown him how to run a sales call, but I didn't connect it to like, oh, he's going to go right from customer development to sales call. And so the customers he was doing customer development with showed up to a sales call and weren't expecting a sales call. Yeah. And they were like, oh, this is a feel bad. And Kenny's like, yeah, I think I might have screwed those up. And so honestly, that conversations with friends like Kenny and other founders is kind of what led to me documenting the funnel, because everybody hears from every VC, every investor, every mentor, advisor. You go through an accelerator and they're like, sell more. Oh, you got a product now? Go sell it.
Yeah,
go sell it. Go sell it. And you're like, well, kind of, but kind of not. Like absolutely you need to get out there and start selling, but you got to do it right. And you got to do it, you got to learn first. And when you jump right into a selling conversation, you kind of lose the opportunity to do that learning and rooting around and asking all those questions. There's kind of a pace and a momentum to every sales conversation. And you kind of, in a call or two, you get to like an eventual yes or no. But if you set up the context as, hey, this is customer development, I'm here to explore and learn, it opens the aperture for what you might cover in a call. And that's when you're kind of manufacturing serendipity, because what you start with may not be exactly what the customer needs. It may not be exactly what you thought it would be, or what the outcome may not be exactly what you thought it would be. But sometimes those are the best opportunities. Those are the best things to find.
Yeah, that is really true. In separating those out and having the conversations. I think part of the reason that accelerators and other things, go sell is because the assumption is that all this was done before you built the product. And I think that's actually the better way to do it, is you go do all this research in the customer development and then build to solve the problem. But I think a lot of founders get that backwards, because we get an idea and then we go build this awesome thing and then we go looking for a market, sell it to.
Mm-hmm. You turn into hammers in search of nails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could really use a Phillips head right now and be like, nah, sorry, bro, I'm a hammer.
Right. And you can use a hammer to put a screw in, but it's much more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried it. It doesn't work very well, but you can do some damage.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the hard part as a founder, is you don't want to go and spend 200 interviews and not accomplish anything from a revenue perspective. But you also don't want to only do 5 and then build something off of like the first 5 people you ever talk to.
Right.
Right. And so my answer to this stress and this pressure is this customer development funnel, is to get founders to think about, okay, eventually I'm going to sell to these people.
Yes.
But first I need to learn from them. And then what happens is naturally the people that carry on from one step to the next turn out to be, the people that believe in you, the people that see the product, see the value the most, the people that have the biggest pain and the opportunity, then they get the opportunity to shape it. Right. And what the customer development funnel does when you use it properly is it maintains momentum. It creates momentum, because it's not just one interview that you're doing. Once you've booked one interview, well, you ask them, okay, well, hey, we're going to have this next step ready in a couple of weeks. Can we set some time for that to happen?
Yeah.
Good old dirty sales habits. That's me. And then you just keep booking that next step. And so if you do one a week, that's 4 weeks away to saying, hey, we've had 4 conversations together. It sounds like this is a good fit. Would you be open to having a conversation about what implementing with this at your organization would look like? And then there's the invite, and they can opt in or they can opt out, right? Whereas the other way is what most people do, is customer development. And they go and they ask people a bunch of questions. They go, okay, cool, thanks. Great to meet you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for telling me about all your pains and problems.
Yeah.
They go put it in a document or a spreadsheet. They go, build the thing. And then they're like, okay, cool. I got to go sell some stuff. What do I do next? Okay, I'm going to open up Apollo and I'm going to start building a list. And then I'm going to email a bunch of people I've never talked to before. When you've got this big pile of people who spent weeks with you, pouring their hearts and souls out, it's like, hey, all this pain here, I don't care about it. Forget about it. Let's just ignore them. Like, imagine if they were on fire and you invented a fire extinguisher.
Right.
And be like, see this thing? You helped me figure it out. Thank you. But now I'm going to go sell it to them. You're still on fire, but I don't care. And I know it's a silly analogy, but that's kind of what founders are doing unintentionally. It's you find this pain, and then you find all these people that are in pain. You've built a relationship with them. Why not start with them? And I know what a lot of founders that are listening are saying is, oh, well, the product changed and product evolved over time. It's like, great, go back to them. See what you learned. See what their opinions are on how it's changed and evolved. And even if they're not a perfect fit because you've changed so much, the best thing that you could do at the end of every call, end of every interview, ask for a referral. Hey, do you
Of
know anybody
course.
else I can interview? And so those are the two things I coach founders with all the time is like at the end of every call, hey, do you know anybody else I could talk to about this? Just an interview. Because an interview is very easy to say yes to.
Right.
Anybody else who I could sell to, very different conversation. So you're more likely to get yeses on the interviews than you are on the, hey, can I sell to anybody else? Right. As you move into like you've got something and it's working and it's showing and proving out the value, then you're more likely to get those, hey, I want you to meet the so-and-so because, you get those revenue related referrals because you're actually solving a problem. But in the early days, you got to kind of put the elbow grease in and work it.
Yeah. Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. That's good. And I like the idea of keeping that where you're building trust over time and then you're asking for permission at some point to pitch. So it's not an ambush where and I've seen this so many times, just like what you said, is that they go in and they do the customer discovery and then they go back, either ghost them and never go back, or go back and pitch. And there's that disconnect. Hey, I agreed to meet with you and now I'm getting pitched. This is not what I expected out of our conversation.
Totally. Let me show you my demo. And here's the admin features. This is how you add users. And you're like, I don't care about any of this stuff.
Right.
Like, show me the magic moment, right? Like, show me the one thing I care about, and then kill your screen share. You know, like, I'm here to give you feedback. So let me give you feedback, don't try and force a product down when I'm not ready. Because that's a really great way to alienate people that have spent time, investing in you. Right. And investing in helping you. And then suddenly you're like, hey, give me some money.
Yeah.
There are ways of doing it along the way that are respectful and don't put people off, but you still get to learn.
Yes.
In my second meeting, I'll ask the price sensitivity questions and I'll say, hey, can I ask you some price sensitivity questions? I'm not asking for money because, we're not talking about selling any product here, but if I asked you for $1,000, would you throw me out of the room? What if I asked you for $10,000? Would you throw me out of the room? Those kinds of questions. Sure. And that helps you kind of get the conversation started about money. So you get a sense for how people feel about things. And yes, it's not as clear as like, okay, they gave me $500. But when you're very, very early, very, very new or breaking into a new market, it really helps to understand, is there a difference in what we can charge this market versus that market? Do they need different features? Do they solve the problem in a different way? Do they get value out of this in a different way?
That's big. Really understanding what that value metric is. And that just kind of leads you back into pricing and packaging. And it is different for different industries. They look at it differently. They're used to buying differently.
Yeah. And so these are all the things that kind of go into the question of like, should I invest in revenue? Or it's like, how strong is your product market fit, right? Because if you think about it from a mathematical equation, and again, I'm a sales guy, not a math guy. So, you take your strength of product market fit, and let's say this is on if you're listening, just bear with me because this is not perfect, but 0 is not at all. 0.1, you've got something, and 1, you've got great product market fit, and 13, you've got Uber's strength of product market fit.
Yeah.
Okay. So 0.1 to 13. And then I guess on the other side, 0 to 1 on sales execution, right? Like 0.1 to 1 on sales execution. What are you going to get out of your go-to-market, right? And my point here is not that you can't go to market with weak product market fit. You absolutely can,
Sure.
but it's going to be a whole lot more efficient, right? In both examples, you are 1 out of 1 set like for your go-to-market efficiency, right? You got a great team, great process, great tech, great tools, great people, everything. That's 0 to 1 impact. But product market fit is 0.1 to 13 impact. So you're going to get a whole lot more out of your investment in any go-to-market if you first focus on strengthening your product market fit. And what that specifically means is making sure you understand all the variables, you understand how the market breaks out, you understand how to have a very specific conversation with a very small number of folks. And it's not just, hey, we're selling to accountants. Go. Right? It's like, okay, we're selling to left-handed accountants that only use QuickBooks and they only serve the pet care industry because they have this specific need and this is the specific obstacle and this is the specific thing we do to solve that. Right. Like you got to have all this big chain of relevance of like, this is my proof for how this is relevant to you right now. And when you can get to that level of specificity, man, your go-to-market can be absolutely magical. But until you get there, look at all the number of examples of people that have had a bad experience with outbound or have had a bad experience with ads or have had a bad experience with any go-to-market channel. When you look at it, inefficient go-to-market is the number one killer of startups, right? Like it kills 70-something%.
Yeah.
And they call it, the survey studies call it premature scale or scaling without product market fit. But when you look at the growth formula, product market fit multiplied by revenue execution, most people aren't dying because of poor revenue execution. They're dying because they're doing a great job of executing, but they're going after the wrong list. If I'm trying to sell my accounting solution to farmers in Nebraska, I don't care how excellent my go-to-market is going to be, right? Farmers in Nebraska aren't going to need what I'm selling. I mean, they probably do have accounting software, but it's not specific to dog grooming or whatever the silly example I gave was, right? It's funny, I use this example all the time, and then we actually had a client that was selling ag tech, and so we actually were selling to farmers in Nebraska, and the whole time, like, this is hilarious to me because I always use that as a silly example, but then I got a chance to come face to face with it. And there actually are, a bunch of farmers in Nebraska that are using ag tech. So yeah, no disrespect.
That makes sense. Well, what's a sign then that a startup isn't ready to invest in growth?
The biggest thing, so I would look at Dave McClure's Pirate Metrics. And he calls it, Pirate Metrics. There's a great slide share on there, but I like to look at that as a funnel, right? And it's acquisition, activation, revenue, and referral, it's retention, revenue, referral. Really, I like to look at, I skip revenue because obviously you're going to get revenue. What I care most about is retention first, right? Like revenue as a number is less important than are they still using the product after 12 months, right? And so first is, are we getting people to retention? Right? That shows that their existing customer base is happy with the product and they're not leaving. Step 2 is, are they happy enough to refer their friends? And once you hit that, everything turns to magic because now you're not just acquiring one customer. Every customer you bring in, if they're happy, they tell their friends, you're acquiring 1.5 customers. Right? So you're spending the same amount to acquire one happy customer that in 6 months is going to be like, wow, Jeff, this is such an amazing product or service. I'm going to tell Bill, and Bill's going to come on, and then Bill's going to tell Sarah, and Sarah's going to tell Jane, and it just turns into this big virtuous cycle. And so what I would ask founders is, are you getting referrals? Are you seeing that growth? Are you seeing stable revenue? Like, all right, are you retaining your customers? Right? Or are you churning away about the same that you're bringing in? Because if you're churning away about the same that you're bringing in, you don't really have super strong product market fit. You could probably use to spend some time doing some interviews and strengthening things.
That's really a good way to look at it and to understand retention first. I mean, revenue is a given, but are they repeating? And I love the referral as well because high CAC is one of the things that kills a lot of companies. And when you can do that, when you get that referral engine going and you can bring that cost down for acquisition, that's huge because those referrals are going to move a lot faster as well. just in the sales process.
Totally. There's a really good joke in there about having a small CAC, but we're just going to leave that alone because we're mature.
Well, one of the things that you shared last time we talked was a market fit matrix. It helps founders refine their go-to-market strategy. You can walk through how that works.
Yeah. And at a high level, we kind of walk through it. I mentioned the chains of relevance earlier.
Yes.
And so the way we kind of think about targeting, and I'll kind of go the high level route, and I'm happy to share the template, and I've got a blog post that can go along with it if people want. Maybe I can send that to you. You can throw it in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. We'll do that.
Perfect. And so basically there's three hypotheses, right? There's the market hypothesis, like the targeting of like what types of companies and what types of people, right? So this is like how you define the company and then how you define the individual. And then there's the need, right? And this is the gap that you found. This is the pain they're experiencing. This is the obstacle that's getting in their way. And then there's how you solve that pain. And that's how have you credibly solved this for others? Why are you relevant right now? Why is this something that is going to have an impact? And that's the kind of believable solution. And I go into a lot more detail in the market fit matrix, but really it's stitching those three together is one way that we've used to help founders bring clarity to what they mean by go after the accountants, because they're not just saying go after accountants. They're actually saying go after kind of left-handed accountants that only use QuickBooks. That these are the people that we have found to be most in need of our pain, of our help. But it's hard sometimes to articulate that in a very precise way. Especially if you, and not a knock on marketing at all, but especially if you work with marketing and then you develop these personas and ICPs and avatars, because sometimes they get into the psychographics and you get really detailed, which are very, very helpful from a sales perspective when you're trying to learn and close somebody. But from a go-to-market perspective, to try and go and build a campaign, an outbound, sequence targeting these psychographics, you can't always do that. And so you need a way of kind of communicating, okay, these are the very specific demographics, these are of the individuals, these are the very specific firmographics of the companies, these are the signals that they might be hiring, right? And so our market fit matrix just gives you a way to have a very specific conversation about who you want to go after and why it's relevant right now.
It's really important because you've got so many possibilities, but it's really I love that who you go after and why right now. There has to be a prioritization of leads or markets that you're going after, and why would you go after one over another? I think being able to understand the why behind that, the driver, really important, not only for sales but for marketing as well.
And the beauty of this process is when you are very specific in this way, it really helps you, one, carve up your market, but two, learn from your failures, right? Like when you're very specific about, okay, we went after this market with this and this audience and this type of pain point with this type of value proposition, and it didn't hit at all. Okay, well, that's a hypothesis that didn't work out, or hypothesis that didn't work out. But when you track, when you're very specific, you can have 30 of these different hypotheses that you're testing, and you have them all tagged to a sales development campaign or a sequence or an ad campaign. And then as the results come in, you can see which hypotheses are winning, which helps you go from the big black box of outbound where you do a bunch of things and you either get something or you don't, to, okay, we tried this and this is what we learned. We tried this and this is what we learned. And then we tried that. Oh, and that was where the magic is. So let's repeat this. Because I don't know about you, but I've looked in my Apollo account and gone, oh, I remember that campaign. Yeah, messaging's good. What list went into that? What criteria were on that list? Because honestly, the list is the most important part. And like having the relationship of the list and the messaging, like I'd rather send a horrible message to an amazing target audience, right? To like one where you put a lot of thought into it and you really narrowed it down to like the right set of a couple hundred accounts versus the absolute perfect message to a pretty mediocre audience.
Interesting. Well, if a startup has limited resources, and I think that's true, for just about every company, we always want more resources. Yeah, and they're thinking about, go to market. Should they focus first on outbound sales, inbound marketing, or maybe something else?
I mean, as somebody who helps founders build outbound teams, I'd say you have to do outbound or you're wasting your time. I'm obviously totally biased. So I'm saying this 100% in jest. I mean, you got to find part of the exploration process is finding out where your customers hang out. And in one of the interviews in the customer development funnel, I think it's the third interview, make a point of asking, what other products have you tried around this area?
Yeah.
And how did you go about finding that? Did somebody tell you about it? Did you go search? Where did you go search? Did you read about it online? Where did you see that? And so when you do these properly, you can actually get your customers to tell you where you need to go. And so I would say outbound because it's good for my business, because that's what I help people do. But I'd be lying if I said absolutely everybody who listens to this, including Jeff, should use outbound, because there's lots of cases where it's not going to be. But the trick is you want to test and you want to make sure that you do it right. Because I know a lot of folks that have tried outbound and they didn't get a good result, but it's because they tripped on one of the speed bumps and they weren't actually, getting their emails delivered, or they didn't have a great audience, or they just tried a tool, but, they didn't put enough time into it. And so my advice to founders would be ask your customers, do customer development interviews and see where they're looking for things, and then show up there. I always start with LinkedIn and email because those are the two tools I know super well. But if you start with customer development interviews and you do outbound to book these interviews and you ask people, hey, do you know anybody else I could talk to? It's a great way to start and get some momentum going.
Yeah. What is your approach to building and scaling a high-performing B2B SaaS sales team?
Donuts, free beer?
Not together, right?
No, that'd be a strange combination.
That would be bad.
Yeah. What is my approach? I mean, I'm a big fan of people, then process, then technology, and so. And before all that, you got to have the right strategy, right? So you need to have strong product market fit. Then you need to know where your customers are going to be, and you need to have the right demand gen channels to reach them. And so if all of your customers are on LinkedIn, then you need to be on LinkedIn, and you need to be, popular on, or not popular, but like engaging on LinkedIn. You need to be showing that you're part of this tribe. If they're all stuck in their email, if they all have desk phones, you need to be cold calling. If they're all on Instagram, you need to be doing that. And so I think before you build, the biggest success or failure of any revenue or go-to-market team is strategy, is knowing going into building the team and the design of the team, which channels am I going to be more likely or less likely to be successful with, right? And then finding ways of testing and iterating on them. And so most sales teams are either doomed or blessed before they're even built. And the trick is as the founder, it's your responsibility to figure out which it's going to be, because it's your choice of, are we going to get some SDRs? Are we going to invest in ads? Are we going to do organic SEO? Are we going to ask our AI LLM overlords to please promote my product in ChatGPT? It hasn't worked yet, but I keep trying, But then, once you've got the strategy set and you've done the math, that you understand that this is going to be a profitable channel, then making sure that you've got the right people, that you hire the right people that have experience in that channel, in selling that dollar value of product in that similar sales style, and that you've got the right training process designed to onboard them and engage and make sure that they have all the right skills. And then you've got the right process for them to follow. And then you've got the right technology and tooling to enable the process. And I always do it in that order. It's the strategy, then it's the people, and then it's the training, then it's the process, and then it's the technology. And each one enables the one before it. So I know it's kind of hard to follow on a podcast, but I hope the analogy carries.
Yes, it does. Like it's really easy to look at the shiny objects and put that technology piece right up at the front, and think that's going to be the savior. That's the thing that's going to really help drive sales. But it's backwards.
And I've talked to a few people more than a few people using AI SDR, and I don't have anything against them, because AI SDR is really good at writing messaging and really good at personalizing messaging. But in my experience, most founders going into using tools like AI messaging, or even tools like ours, like I've been running an outbound agency for 13 years. I've seen this over and over and over again. The success or failure goes into, did we get a good list? And I haven't seen any AI tool that is really great at building a fantastic list. And not just a fantastic list, but then connecting it with the reason why we're reaching out today, right? It's that whole, this isn't a language problem. This isn't a math problem, right? It's with the kind of combination of understanding what the human in front of you is trying to say, like, Jeff, who are your best customers? And then connecting it and making sure that we're getting to a level of specificity where we can have a really relevant conversation. And when you use AI to, I think with anytime you're using an LLM, if you got a crappy prompt, you're going to get a crappy output. And
Right.
I think that's probably what a lot of people are seeing with these AI SDR tools. And if you're listening and you got one, I'd love to take a look because I'd happily be proven wrong. But I've had a number of conversations in the last couple of months about these, and I'm not seeing a lot of AI SDR companies with extremely long, with great SDR or great customer retention.
That's the thing is a lot of people will try it and buy, and then ran across a company a couple of weeks ago and 12% churn a month. It's like, that tells me everything I need to know. People aren't staying because it's not delivering. And it'll probably get there, but we're not there yet.
And the challenge is, like, it's a great message to a poorly planned audience. And in order to get to a really well-planned audience, you as the client or the person designing the AI SDR campaigns you need to invest human time into that. And you just can't do that for $1,000 a month and be profitable. Yeah.
Well, where do you see sales strategies evolving in the next 2 or 3 years, especially with AI and automation?
Yeah, it's wild. I think we're heading towards Iron Man, I'm a big fan of, one, it's just cool to say. And two, we've seen automation time and time again come, and everybody said, the printing press was going to annihilate jobs. And then, agricultural automation everybody was going to be unemployed. But what happened? We just found different jobs to do. And I think there's still a lot of unsolved problems in this world. I think there's still a lot of jobs to be done. And I think, if anything, it's going to reduce the really hard work of, like, the sales role. Like, one thing, I was on a call earlier with my sales team, and, like, we automated the inbound lead qualification, and not necessarily the whole qualification. We're not putting it to an AI. We did try it and it's working pretty well. But we're automating all the research. So whenever we get an inbound lead, I looked at all the things that my AE was doing, and I said, okay, well, I can find that on LinkedIn. I can find this, I can find that, I can find that. And so we have it look up the 12 things that they would look up anyway. And now they don't have to do that. And so we get a lead comes in, and 4 minutes later, they've got this fully built up profile that just shows up for them. I'm like, that's magic.
That is magic, yeah.
And it's probably an equal, maybe even slightly worse version than I would do myself manually, but I didn't have to do any of that work. I get to go read it and I go, yeah, okay, that's right, that's not right. Cool. Now my lead research time has gone from like 20 minutes to 0 minutes. And so I think we're going to head more in that direction. I think that we're going to be automating things where you've been just putting in human grunt work or elbow grease. I think it's going to up level everybody. And it's going to create new jobs because I don't know. I don't think, I think we're going to, like, if I was a Salesforce admin, I don't think I'd be super excited about the direction Salesforce is going, especially with, I think the time is coming for Salesforce to kind of not be the darling child of the SaaS world anymore. I'm sure they're still going to keep renewing big customers, but I think we're starting to see the seeds of companies that are going to erode some of their competitiveness and some of their dominance. And I don't think they're going to fall immediately, but I think if I was a Salesforce admin, I'd be looking at like how do I incorporate AI into what I'm doing, into what my company is doing? Because I think that's the direction. It's going to be us working alongside Skynet. It's not going to be Skynet versus the world. It's going to be, we're going to have this, I don't know, R2D2 C3PO character. And we'll be like, never tell me the odds.
That sounds like a great use case. And I love the idea of being able to have it build a profile. And even if it gets 90% of the way there, it's 0% of the work that you had to do in order to do that. And close enough. Is that extra 10% really going to be the difference in winning or losing a deal? Probably not.
No. But just in that example, it takes away 20 minutes of required time of going
Right.
in and researching. Now I can spend that to do a better job. Right? Now I'm going to have more time as myself, as my AE, to invest in myself, to put more time into, okay, so this is the plan. Now, what am I going to do with that? And how is that going to connect? And I can be better prepared for the plan because I'm not spending my time clicking around on the internet. If you or your AE or your SDR is spending any time doing manual research, clicking around, looking things up, searching things up, looking for things, like all that can be automated and probably should be automated.
Yes. No,
And
without a
so when
doubt.
you do that, it's not like you're going to just be like, okay, cool. My quota has gone down. It's not going to go down. It's going to go up. And so
Yes.
how do I do a better job? How do I use my time better? How do I, now that I have all this time, how am I going to use that to improve the experience for my clients? So I think AI is going to let us do more. And there are some people that are thinking that it's going to end the world and everybody's going to be out of jobs, but I don't know. I haven't seen historical innovations that have. And again, I'm probably not the person to talk to about this because I'm just a sales guy turned entrepreneur who's been playing with AI, and I'm coding myself in the evenings, and it's pretty cool. It's
It
impressive.
is.
Like I'm building an application in Ruby on Rails, and I'm gonna push it. And I'll have people using it in a couple weeks. So it's wild what I can do, but. My buddy Preston, who's a very talented engineer, I'm not going to put Preston out of a job.
Right.
But in 3 to 5 years, is Preston going to be doing different work?
Probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, where can people learn more about you and about predictable revenue online?
There's a couple places. So you can find me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. Pardon me. As soon as you said that, something jumped into my throat here. If you're a founder and you care about revenue or finding product market fit, I've got a newsletter that you can track me down. I'll throw Jeff a link so you can check in your show notes, called Predictable Revenue Founders Edition. And then I also run a founder meetup, founder revenue meetup. It's a monthly thing, free for any founders. And this is me. I'm a big fan of like a value first sales process. And so anybody who I invite that I meet that is a founder, they're trying to figure out revenue. They don't have to buy anything from me. They don't have to buy the book. They don't have to subscribe. They can just drop me an email and show up. And it's something that we do as sort of like it's lead nurturing / it's helping people. It's leading with value. And so I run this once a month. It's for founders. We show up, we say, okay, this is the biggest problem related to revenue. We get everybody who shows up to kind of contribute. We all vote on, okay, which 3 are we going to take? And then we all chip in and try and solve 3 people's problems. So that's been a pretty fun experience.
Nice. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure and link that in the show notes.
Absolutely. And
It's such a great conversation.
Thanks. Yeah, if you're interested, it's pretty easy to guess my email address if you're clever.
Very good. Colin, again, great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Right on. Jeff, thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks again, Colin, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Colin and predictable revenue at predictablerevenue.com. Be sure to check out that podcast as well. It's a predictable revenue podcast, easy to remember. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. We've got lots of resources over there for you, and that is at Champion Leadership on YouTube. Thought leaders share. I bet you're one of those. Share this episode with someone who loves thinking big and pushing boundaries like Colin does. Everyone who shares this week gets an AI assistant that instantly follows up with prospects before they ghost you. How about that? Is that a good idea or not? I don't know. You tell me. What if your pricing strategy could unlock massive growth and maximize your revenue potential? Join us on our next episode as James Wilton, a pricing strategy expert and former senior expert at McKinsey & Company, shares how SaaS companies can optimize pricing, monetize new products, and drive sustainable profitability. Then next week on our founder episode, we sit down with David Hirschfeld, founder of the Launch First system, to explore how startups can go from concept to cash flow in months, not years. It is so fascinating what he is doing over there with Launch First. David will break down the common pitfalls that cause most software startups to fail and reveal the strategies that set successful founders apart. Really excited about that one. I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.